This week's show brought to you by Tim Duncan circa 2003, changing more games than anyone. Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. It is the prime time of the off season, so there is news, there is stuff to discuss, and as a result, we need more help than ever. Whatever. All right, I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers. We have on with us again Andrew Sutton, our off-season acquisition. I don't know, where'd you rank yourself, Andrew? Definitely better than Myers, Leonard, or Allen Crabbe. I don't know if I'd quite call you Durant, though.
Mid-level, around $6 million a year.
I'd take it.
I'd take that too.
All right, and of course, as always, our show is produced by the. I'm out of adjectives, Brian, and I think I always go back to the well. I think I always go for normal. I'm gonna have to start writing those down. But Brian Foster, aka Boxscore Brian on Twitter. We got a ton to discuss. As for those of you that listen to the show regularly, basically we kind of throw a bunch of topics at a wall, usually based on articles we've written or email discussions we've had. And then we try and go for about an hour. Last week we failed and went for an hour and a half, Brian. So I'm going to try and keep us to an hour this week. But yeah, we have a bunch to go over. So basically our topic's going to be NBA free agency. And then, some old stuff like Tim Duncan, because, he announced retirement. Now, Andrew, you weren't on last week because we spent, almost all of the show talking, at least in some way, Kevin Durant. But we definitely have to let you get your licks in there because it's still the biggest piece of news. And then there's been more about it. So, Andrew, any thoughts on Kevin Durant? And then Brian kind of wanted to discuss some of the kind of business applications and implications of him.
We might actually get to see significant death lineup minutes. So I'm all for that.
Lineup.
Yeah, I'm all for that. And Durant in Golden State with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. It's going to be the three-point shooting massacre, basically. It's going to be the best three-point shooting trio of all time.
And I mean, that's impressive because, wasn't Draymond pretty good last year? Obviously, last year, Curry.
And they're also Ray Allen's in talks with trying to join up.
No, just don't, Ray.
He's older than me.
Off the bench.
Even if you look at Ray Allen, obviously that the death shot that sunk the Spurs back in the day was damned impressive. But even then, I'm gonna look this up really quick. Ray Allen was on a sharp decline there. He was not very good towards the end, and I think. Yeah, his last season, not very good. I mean, he's like average, and I mean that was 2 years ago. I can't buy he'd be an above average player. They don't need him.
You can probably find another 3-point specialist in the D League or something overseas, probably. So yeah, you'll find cheap options.
One thing, and I've actually got this as my pinned article on my Twitter account, Brian, is this article you wrote back in the day on Durant, back when. People like Rick Barry, who I might talk more on the show depending on what we discuss, were arguing chemistry and stuff. And you kind of did this interesting Moneyball approach where you were like, how do we get Durant his shots? And what's fascinating to me is because the Warriors have lost Barnes and Spates, that on its own... And Barbosa. Basically, if you just give him those three players shots, he's there. Like... That's what's interesting to me is that, especially if you kind of, I don't know what the Warriors are planning. And certainly I do not expect any of Draymond, Durant, or Curry or Klay to come off the bench. None of them have the Manu Ginobili-like personality to do that, which is a shame, by the way. Manu Ginobili, freaking amazing player, underrated. When I was looking up Tim Duncan, one of the things that kept happening is I'd go, Tim Duncan wasn't the best player in this season, or Tim Duncan wasn't the best player in this playoffs, or Tim Duncan wasn't the best player in this finals on the Spurs in his prime. Who the heck could have usurped him? And it was always Manu Ginobili. So anyway, none of them are going to do Manu Ginobili, but that doesn't mean that team does not have the ability to, if I'm the Warriors, I pretty much ensure that one of Draymond, Curry, or Durant is always on the court when the game is still, in range. And I would call it in range within 15 points.
It's almost like the OKC problem when they had Harden and the way they would try to stagger the minutes. Is you should always have at least one of those guys on the floor, or at least two.
And what's interesting...
There's ways you can get around that. And the argument against, well, hey, if we put there's only one ball. I think that's so stupid. No one makes that complaint when Team USA has all of the top NBA players, and they find a way to crush everybody.
Oh, and by the way, I put that tweet out today actually because I noticed that people are bitching about super teams, and then I noticed that another thing that I'm seeing simultaneously, and I'm looking through my feed. One is what super teams are ruining the NBA, and I definitely want to talk why that's a bullshit argument. I guess I'm on the curse train again, Brian. Anyway, and the other argument I'm seeing is Team USA is the weakest it's ever been, and I'm going, all right, if you think parity for the sake of parity is good, then why don't you want the Olympics to be more fair? Why it pretty much explains people's mentality, which is it's not that you hate super teams. You just hate super teams when it isn't your team. Yeah, the minute it's Team USA, everybody doesn't give a damn about if it's a super team or not. And so, and it's also worth noting about super teams destroying the NBA. I guess I'm going to start going on this tangent. Either of you can chime in when I'm done. Is the NBA as constructed simply does not have the amount of talent to make it really a competitive league with 30 teams. You could probably make a competitive 8 to 10 team NBA, and that's if you forcibly split up the talent. Because, as much crap as we give the Warriors, even though they make mistakes, the mistakes that the Warriors and the Cobb make, the mistakes that Mark Cuban and the Mavericks make, though Harrison Barnes, really? Seriously, guys? Sorry. The mistakes those teams make versus the mistakes that teams like the Knicks perpetually make always cause a disparity. But the reality is you could have a competitive league if you got rid of 20 teams. But because that's not going to happen, if you go to the Boxscore Geeks page, boxscoregeeks.com/players and sort by wins produced, you'll notice that we cap out at 10 wins with Tobias Harris. 2, 4, 5, 6. And I think that's, about 25 players. So that means that there's only enough room there's not even enough room for a team if you count 10 wins as a star in the NBA. And what's more, there is a huge disparity, right? If I get to pick first in this draft and I get Curry, and you get to pick 15th and you get Jimmy Butler, no one's going to dispute that, my team's already on better footing. So, the NBA can't really be fair. We know that. Unless you were to make drastic changes. And why would, we don't necessarily want to do that because it's a business. So this idea that we want a really fair NBA just doesn't sit well with me, because that's not, in fact, the best product, which is funny because people just kind of argue for, parity for parity's sake.
So I have a question to follow up your comment, Dre. Do you guys think that next year's Warrior team or the Olympic team is a better team?
Ooh, I have not looked at.
We'll have to compare those rosters side by side, so we don't have to answer now. But it's just something to think about.
I'll look it up in the background, and you can talk. You can talk, Andrew. I'm going to look up the Olympics team for Team USA basketball, and if you're more prepared than I, you can give your thoughts.
And I don't know right offhand, but I was going to make a point on what you were talking about, Dre, and it's basically like the capitalism cliche where they say when you get too big. Well, not capitalism. Well, capitalism/mainstream cliche of when you get too big, it saturates the product. And
so, like the WWE argument, the fact that they don't have any competition, that it's just the WWE. People would argue it's stagnated in terms of creative, has lots of problems, which is kind of the case.
Or like with the movie industry, where it's almost like they regurgitate the same movies over and over and over. And there's not a lot of innovation or creativity, which I think sometimes that could be overblown. But when you look at the box office numbers, you see that the same properties are being regarded at top spots instead of the art house film or something.
But what's to that point, what's fascinating is just the industry is kind of pivoted because Netflix and Amazon and YouTube. It's not that I don't have the ability to see these creative things. It's kind of interesting in that, at least in the movie industry, this is a weird tangent, but in the movie industry, there's all sorts of other ways to basically get video entertainment. We are an example of that, right? Old school days, we would have had to have gotten a local radio station, or maybe hoped for a local station to do a sports show, to do kind of an ESPN show, which is what we're doing, right? We're doing an ESPN talk show around the Horn Show. But now we can just throw it on YouTube. We can throw it on Twitch, and we don't need millions of people. We don't need to justify to a network, hey, we're going to get hundreds of thousands of viewers. We get a couple hundred, we get a couple thousand viewers, and we call it good.
But I feel like no one wants to be niche. No one wants to be niche. Now I'm thinking no one strives to be niche.
Well, and I mean, yeah, I think what's important to recognize, because I agree with you, is that movies are a business, and in theory, teams should be a business, but there's lots of reasons that's not the case. And I mean, I think Dave Barry always brings this up when he talks about people that call movies a failure because of critical ratings.
This is the Avengers theory, right, Dre?
Now, I think Dave is slightly wrong on that argument because, for instance, Batman versus Superman did very well in theory, right? It grossed, 900 million worldwide, and the real question you should ask yourself with a movie is,
and we will never know with the actual numbers because they fudge the numbers in accounting practices. It's an accounting practice.
Yeah, movies get so funny. I think Darth Vader. I feel bad. I'm forgetting the actor's name. Not James Earl Jones, just the tall guy that walks around being Darth Vader. I guess is still waiting on his royalty check or whatever you want to call it for Return of the Jedi, because according to them, even though I think, adjusted for inflation, I believe it's one of the top 10, one of the top 20 grossing movies of all time. They claim they haven't turned a profit. And by the way, that actually relates a lot
to that whole adjusted for inflation thing is kind of flawed too.
Oh, interesting. Brian, we were going to talk Kevin Durant free agency, but I don't care. It's the offseason.
Tangent.
No, this is fine. I mean, what I should stress is it's the offseason and a lot of news is happening right now, and it's very tempting on this show to just try and get all of it in or to talk for 2 hours. And what a better strategy might be, enjoy some of these tangents. And listeners, if you're getting fed up with it.
Should I get in here then, Dre?
No, I was just, I'll finish this up and then maybe we get back. But I was just going to say, the adjusted for inflation stuff and then all the other shady practice, those actually apply to NBA teams because, the NBA, the numbers say that they have to pay a specific amount of revenue. That amount of revenue is fixed. And people that are saying players are getting so overpaid, there is a cultural reason to maybe be upset that a professional basketball player is making that much money. But there is not a business sense to say they shouldn't get the money because the NBA has only 400 players, 400 to 500 players. The rules say they get half of this giant pie, and that giant pie is in the billions now. So when you go, I can't believe how much these players are getting paid, it's like, it's not their fault. This is going to sound like the most freaking capitalist thing ever, Brian. It's not their fault. It's your fault, fan, because you keep buying the product. And if you weren't buying the product, you wouldn't give them money. And I think what most people miss is that the money that doesn't go to the players goes to billionaires that are getting tax breaks for having those teams.
They don't play the game at all.
Yeah,
they do nothing. They do nothing. I'm sorry, owners. It's true.
Yeah, I got into it with my art teacher once about this, and she was just annoyed at how much money athletes get paid and that teachers don't get paid enough. Well, I was telling her, I was like, well, you don't garner a crowd of people to come watch you teach, so why would you get upset about it?
now, to be fair, there is the argument that she should have is not against the players. She has a very legitimate argument to go, my local government, if you're in a team with a city with a team, not team with a city, a city with a team, my local government, for instance, I'm in Wisconsin. So Scott Walker agreed to, I don't know if it's a loan or actual cash. Either way, it's obscene because even if you give a billionaire a loan at no interest, that's giving them money. If I give someone a $500 million loan and don't collect interest, what I have essentially done, if it takes them years to pay back, is I'm giving them like $10 million a year. Because I could have been making interest on that loan or doing anything else. So you can be upset that your local government is investing in a team instead of investing in teachers and local infrastructure. You cannot be mad at the player for getting paid what they're worth. And this is one I got into with my wife, actually, same kind of argument about teachers, is what most people miss is the less than 1,000 or so elite athletes that make any of the major leagues, that make the NBA, that make Major League Baseball. Football's a little different, but they're way weirder because their money's not guaranteed. The elite under 1,000 group that make it there make these big paychecks. The average teacher makes more than the average professional baseball player because no one remembers that a bunch of people, I just did this week. I went to the single A team that plays out of Appleton, Wisconsin, the Timber Rattlers. no one realizes that these players are making less than 30,000 a year with the hopes that they might one day make it to the majors, and most of them have no shot.
And I wonder what the median will look like, because I tend to look at the median more than I look at the average, because sometimes they get skewed by outliers.
And actually, you're reminding me of a piece that Devin and I wrote back in the day, because that exact point, when people say, when people say the average NBA player makes $5 million, it's not hard to look and go, and that's gone up obviously, but it's not hard to go, well, LeBron James makes 16 mil, that's 3 players. And Kobe Bryant makes 25 million, that's 5 players. And Tim Duncan makes 15 mil, that's 3 players. You go, for every one of these players that's making more than 2 to 3 times the average player, there has to be an offset. And so everybody forgets that, there are these people that are making, and that are making, $500,000. And, it sounds like $500,000 is a lot. Any one of us would be happy. And one of the problems we run into when we discuss this is that we forget that, that $500,000 includes agent fees, includes other fees. Their benefits aren't the same. When I work for a company, like when I work for Google, or actually every company I've worked with had a 401k plan or a stock plan that basically meant I was investing towards my retirement. That kind of stuff is not included. So,
take the stock options.
Always take the stock. The people that don't take advantage of matching, so weird. But I was just going to say, people miss that because they think this person's making $500,000 a year. If I was making $500,000 a year, it would be amazing. And you go, you can make whatever you're making right now, probably for the next 20 years, no matter who you are, right? In almost any age, you will probably be able to make similar to that wage for the next 20 years. These players have a 5-year window, and when they're done, they're going to drop from being worth $500,000 a year to probably being worth 0, unless they happen to get their degree, and most players did not.
Andrea, I just want to add to that for those non-political followers out here. Scott Walker is the governor of Wisconsin, your state.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I almost cussed again.
Fortunately, there's some people who don't know who he is. They're lucky souls.
Well, he was briefly a presidential candidate, and I was like a mixed bag, because it's like, well, if he gets the presidency, he'll get the hell out of our state and stop screwing stuff up. But at the same time,
just to get back onto the Durant thing. Not only do people hate super teams, but they also hate when you use those super teams in 2K.
Everyone's mad about 2K now. They're worried this is going to be the best team ever. But yeah, just to follow up on this stuff, though, like I was showing a few minutes ago, I'll bring it up again. And we talked about this before in the last few weeks. The 2 super teams in the NBA Finals this year, the Warriors and the Cavaliers, is one of the best ratings of all time. Like, people love watching these great players.
Yeah, when people say they hate, what is really, really important is not to ask.
Cavaliers a super team.
They brought in Kevin Love and
I would qualify them as the traditional argument for a super team, which is star athletes going out of their way to be on a team together. And by the way, I made a comment about Larry Bird. So this week, I don't think I put it on the script, Brian, apologies, but Larry Bird said something like he couldn't have imagined playing on the Lakers with Magic Johnson. And what's kind of, I think Larry Bird doesn't realize this because he joined I'm going to put this in quote, 29-win Celtics team. But what he doesn't realize is essentially Red Auerbach essentially fleeced a super team from the Warriors. What Larry Bird doesn't realize is that he joined a super team, and the only difference between the super team he joined and the super team Kevin Durant joined is instead of Kevin Durant making the decision, Red Auerbach made the decision. And there's something really weird to me about an old rich white guy in Larry Bird saying it's not cool for a young rich black guy in Kevin Durant to make a decision to join a super team because it was justified in his day when an old rich white guy made the call. I mean, it's
also weird to have this allegiance to an organization or to a owner who wants to exploit you. It's weird. I always thought when players want to be loyal to a franchise, I always thought it was weird. They wanted you for your skill. It's not like it was a one-sided thing. They wanted you for a reason.
They want to crush you in the CBA negotiations too, right?
Yeah, like Dre made this point on a Wages of Wins post, and it was basically whenever a player got over on an owner, the owner adjusted for that, for feeling slighted, for getting slighted.
Oh yeah,
so the draft, free agency, Kevin Garnett when he not Kevin Garnett, Glenn Robinson.
Kevin Garnett counted because Kevin Garnett got the biggest
Oh
contract
yeah,
in NBA
and Glenn
history.
Robinson too.
And immediately after the CBA, immediately after Kevin Durant, they said it's unacceptable. These star athletes are way overpaid. We have to max cap them. And now the owners are feeling the brunt of that because here's the rule: if the Thunder were allowed to spend all of their cap space and then some on Kevin Durant, he wouldn't have left. But the reason he left is they're only allowed to pay him about $8 million more a season. And to him, the marketability, his Nike agent is like, if you're really worried about that $8 million a year, getting you next to Steph Curry, we'll work something out, Kevin.
Yeah. Yeah, people just having a loyalty to like things like I'm always being accused of being a fair weather fan, so I'm more with the players. I don't really care for being a fan of a team. So whenever
sorry, I keep cutting you off, Andrew. Yeah, to be fair on being a fair weather fan, what's fascinating to your point about loyalty to a team is all of these players were drafted. They didn't make the decision to go to a team, so it's like you need to be loyal to something you had no choice in. It's the same argument. When you're a fan, when someone tells me you're not a Bucks fan, and I'm like, I just live here. Like I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't.
If I was born in another place, I might be a fan of that team. It just so happens I live here.
Yeah, so I agree with that point. It is a little interesting. Now, the last point, and I think we kind of were talking this and kind of went away, is when we talk about super teams and what people say. I think it's bad for the league. What we really need to be looking at, and I hope Adam Silver's in the same boat, is not what they say, it's what they pay for. I think this is one of the most important economic problems that we have. Survey data. This was a big point in the book Blink, which is what got me into the Wages of Wins, because he brings up Dave Barry's research in that book, is, you have focus groups or you have blind taste tests like the Pepsi Challenge, and you ask people, do you like this brand? Do you like this thing? What do you think of this movie? And they all say this stuff. And the real question you should be asking is not, what do you think of this, right? The real question you should ask yourself is, would you give your money to this? So as an example on the super team issue, I brought this up a few times already this year.
And how much would you give?
Oh, and how much exactly. And so on that exact point, I brought this up a few times this year already. My local sports store stocks Warriors gear. It doesn't stock Bulls gear. It doesn't stock Lakers gear. It doesn't stock Celtics gear. It stocks Warriors gear. As Brian pointed out, the finals were highly watched, meaning people watched it. Something I haven't looked at yet, Brian, but I think I have the data for, is I'd be really interested to look at the road attendance for the Spurs and the Warriors. And a funny point about the Warriors at the end of last season, I was thinking about this. So people are complaining, what happens if the Warriors go 82-0? And I thought to myself, well, the Warriors only went 73-9, and I don't, only sounds like a weird way of phrasing it, but they lost to some bad teams. They lost to the Nuggets, who didn't make the playoffs. They lost to the Lakers, who didn't make the playoffs. Are you honestly telling me if they had, what? Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, I think the Milwaukee Bucks also beat. I know the Nuggets beat both. I don't know if the Bucks beat both. But all I was going to say on that is, are you honestly telling me that had the Warriors beaten the Nuggets, the Lakers, the Bucks, and I forget who else they lost to, are you honestly telling me that would have impacted how would have impacted how people were happy or sad about it? Would people not have gone to see games? Are you telling me it is more or less likely someone would have gone to see a Denver Nuggets game against the Warriors than if the Warriors were a worse team? I can't believe for a second that's the case.
So breaking news, Dre and Andrew. I have the NBA attendance for 2016 up on screen right now. And the Warriors
I don't know if
are
that's
actually
breaking news, but go ahead.
That's breaking news for our show. The Warriors are actually only number 2 in road attendance this season. Can you guess who is number 1? It's spoiled for people watching
it'd have
the
to be
video
the Lakers.
show.
That's easy.
It's the Lakers. Yeah, it's Kobe. Okay. The Spurs are actually only 9th, so they're kind of, I think, billed as a team that's, not a team of superstars. It's a team that just plays together, even though we know Leonard is a superstar and whatnot. He may not be perceived that way by road fans as much.
This was in the Wages of Wins, by the way. Dave Barry pointed out that a classic argument we hear is people like watching superstars. And he said, that's true. They like watching superstars on the road. And if you think about it, this makes sense. It's kind of like a band touring. The reason the Lakers are number 1 is because Kobe is touring his farewell tour. And you could argue, by the way, for all the, it's funny when we talk about like the right mentality of players. for all of the crap that Tim Duncan is getting, or not crap, but like the praise for being a humble guy and blah, 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 blah. As a business move, would it have been better for the NBA if he'd announced his retirement before the season? And then that means more people probably would have come to see him on his road games. So, but fans do come to see stars on the road. And the problem with that mentality is teams, at least in terms of splitting gate revenue, the home team gets most of the gate. So it doesn't do you any good to have a star player if the way that star player is going to make money is for road teams.
And just to round out the rest of the top 5 here, we have the Cavaliers are 3, of course, with LeBron and Kevin Love and whatnot. The Knicks are number 4. Carmelo Anthony, I guess, is a big star still to some road fans. Although we could say that New York's such a big city and state that maybe they just have people living all around the country. Who knows? And of course,
one other thing I want to look at with that, Brian. So it's, we're already getting down the economics rabbit hole. Is road teams don't play the same set of road teams, and all stadiums are not created equal. So, for instance, the Bulls have the biggest stadium, and so if you're in the Eastern Conference, you're going to play the Bull. And if you're in the same division, you're going to play the Bulls more than other teams.
The small market Thunder do round out the top 5 as the 5th highest grossing road team, though. So people want to see Durant and Westbrook, I guess.
But I was going to say, if I was going to look over this, and it's something I've looked at before.
Say the capacity percentage.
Exactly. Is what does the capacity of each stadium look like? And I'm willing to bet when the Warriors down that stretch, down those, there would probably be no reason to watch the Warriors play the Grizzlies last season down the stretch of the season, or even like the Timberwolves, right? They lost to the Timberwolves when they were so close to the record. There is no reason to watch them play the Memphis Grizzlies, who were playing, I don't know, I think they were playing players off the local basketball court. That's how beat up they were. People probably watched that because they were coming close to the record. So I don't see the argument of no one wants to watch a super team when the data seems to say the exact opposite.
So I've got a question for you guys about this. So Adam Silver is obviously a really smart guy, and he makes a lot of money, is well paid for it. So we're showing this, I'll bring it up again, this New York Daily News article that came out today. Adam Silver considering rule changes to avoid NBA super teams. And there's quotes of him saying, I think it's a bad idea that Durant went to Golden State, but he covers his ass and said, well, he's a free agent, so it's okay. But this stuff he said is getting a lot of publicity for that. Now, I've got this other article here from a local Bay Area guy I came across, Ray Ratto, who's kind of known as a sweater-wearing curmudgeon, but is still entertaining at any rate. He says he thinks Adam Silver does like the super teams, that it's just an act to placate some of the owners, and that he sees the ratings, he sees all those numbers, he's just doing his job as commissioner, talking down the super teams. But really, he loves it and wants Durant in the Bay Area. So, what do you guys think? Is Adam Silver being honest when he talks down super teams or not? Tough question.
A little bit of both, because he's also a fan of basketball. The way he talks about basketball, I think he's a fan of basketball, and but he also has a job, so he has to, like you said, placate the owners. So he's basically the owner's mouthpiece, and with that, he has to voice the opinion of some of the owners who didn't like that Kevin Durant, because a lot of owners are small market owners, and they probably feel like that could probably be their team if they get if they draft a young star and he leaves their team, and they don't want to see that happen to them.
I mean, I think 100% he's going to placate the owners because, as you mentioned, Andrew, the article I wrote back in the day basically showed anytime the owners feel like they get slighted, they basically are willing to make rules that essentially screw the league. The super teams that are in existence now are 100% a result of the NBA being mad against other super teams, or not even other super teams. Like the Kevin Garnett argument was for a lot of owners. They said, we could have had Kevin Garnett. We could have made our team better. But we weren't allowed to, so screw them. We want a shot. And now owners that have stars are going, other teams are stealing our stars. That's not fair. And I mean, it's so childish.
The funny thing is they shot themselves in the foot. Like, all of that stuff they added just because they pouted and got mad that they didn't get a certain player. Like what was it? The first guy who like who initiated the whole draft thing, and owner got mad because he lost a negotiation. Oh
Yeah, and
well, well.
that was back in football way in the
Yeah,
day, and it was Bell, I believe his name was, for the Eagles, and yeah, basically he got mad he didn't get the draft rights to a player that basically turned into a Greg Oden, a player that played one season, didn't really play that great.
and look what they
Um,
did with Wilt Chamberlain, the whole territorial thing. Because wasn't he supposed to go to like wasn't it the Warriors?
he
Yeah,
didn't.
so he forced his way off a few different teams. He was on the Philadelphia Warriors, then he was supposed to go out to Golden State, and he ended up going to the 70s. I don't know, but then he went to the Lakers too. He like forced his way into
No,
the
the
Lakers.
territorial pick was he went to school, the old school rule, and again, teams use this as just an excuse. They said the draft lets us draft players out of college, but you know what? If they go to school nearby, the team, we should get first crack at them because there's already going to be a local fan base for them. The argument would, for instance, be let's see if Washington, the Washington Wizards could have argued for Carmelo, I guess. I don't know what the closest team to Syracuse is. But they could have said that and gone, he's really close to us, so we should get him. And that they actually implemented that rule, but that rule got implemented in a year where two teams had two stars that were really close to them, and they knew they weren't going to have a shot at drafting them. So yeah,
But the whole thing, I was gonna say, but the whole thing, owners just you can't complain about something you did to yourself. You can't get mad that you got shot, but you had the pistol in your pocket and it went off.
It's the Clay Bennett arguing about being a small market team. No, why are you in Oklahoma City? It wasn't like the NBA.
We don't need a team in Oklahoma. We don't need a team in Oklahoma City. We don't. I'm sorry.
We don't need a team in Milwaukee. Apparently, everywhere I live is just a place we don't need NBA teams. Because I've lived in Denver, I've lived in Colorado and Wisconsin now, and neither one of these states can really support a team given our size.
And I read I've read Ways to Win posts so many times. It's just getting like that piece with Arturo. He wrote which cities need a team.
Yeah, that was Arturo and Devin back in the day, and I'd be really interested to see updated stuff on that.
I've read that piece like 10 or 20 times. And Atlanta, I'm sorry, they don't need that many teams. A lot of cities don't need that many. Like Indianapolis doesn't need that many teams. There's so many teams that could be probably moved or just not have.
And even from, like, as I just mentioned, Chicago has one of the biggest capacities of any NBA arena. Now, I don't know luxury suite, because from an owner's perspective, let's be candid, the way to make money is luxury suites or close seats. But what I was going to say is the NBA, next time a team in Wisconsin did this, the freaking Milwaukee Bucks got a stadium from Scott Walker, which is crap, and I don't support it, and we shouldn't have done that. But the NBA could say, what makes more sense? We have a stadium in Chicago, which isn't that far from you, by the way. I live in Wisconsin, and it takes me a couple hours to get to Chicago, about 3.
Just move the team.
Why don't we move to Chicago? Guess what? You can share the arena. We don't even need to make a new arena. Not only that, if you guys want improvements, you've got 2 franchises there now. You can foot the bill together, right? The Clippers.
Yeah, LA does the same thing.
LA does that, and I mean, it's such a pity that the Lakers stayed loyal to Kobe. But imagine the Staples Center with both Chris Paul and a good Lakers team. Imagine what that attendance could look like.
And I think a lot of people get confused with North American sports leagues in that they're acting as if each team is its own company, which is not true. The whole league is one company, and each team is sort of like a department or a division of that one company. It's not like soccer where Man United is its own entity and probably could have its name in like a stock market or something. You could probably buy shares or something. They could probably go public. It's not like that. It's not like the New York Knicks could go public. It's not like that.
I would love to see sports teams go public, because one of the problems companies have now is essentially the stock market has a problem in that it's really a sociopath. In that if I'm a company and I go public, and I want to take care of my employees and I want to do this. I mean, there are already rules in place that say you're not supposed to prevent your company from making profit. A publicly traded company can have votes where they basically say, screw employee benefits because that doesn't make us money. But Steven Szymanski in Soccernomics talked about, like, the problem with sports teams is you can't ever really run a sports team efficiently like a business
Yeah.
because your stockholders, your fan, like this is why states routinely, right? Voters routinely agree to give stadiums to teams
Which
that have
is
no business with the stadium. So I would be fascinated to see sports teams as publicly traded companies, just because, the stock market right now would say you got to
the
cut.
owners. The owners wouldn't go for it though.
Well, of course not. But I'm saying I would love to see the dynamic, because if the Lakers were a publicly traded team, obviously we would want to get rid of Kobe Bryant. But
Yeah.
people are irrational about sports. So what would that would be a fascinating dynamic to see irrational, stockholders saying we can't get rid of Kobe Bryant versus rational ones saying he's costing us money. That would actually be a very interesting.
All I know is I call dibs on San Antonio. I want some shares. I call,
They seem like
they have a valuable future.
they seem like one of those companies that they would go public to raise some money, and then they would buy themselves out after they got big enough again.
I was about to make a movie analogy. I was gonna say, like, over the last few years, the Lakers is like that superhero blockbuster movie that made a lot of money but was crappy, and San Antonio is like this like small indie film that critics love but they don't make a lot of money, especially when Brian made when he was talking about the attendance numbers.
That's an interesting, because I mean, basically what you're saying is the Lakers are kind of like Zack Snyder's Superman franchise, in that it's had some success and it's been declining, but it's still doing well enough that there's no reason to stop it.
Or it's basically Nintendo living off the past.
Although I mean, Pokemon Go, I mean, I'm routinely impressed by that. I mean, we don't have time to get on that.
For our audio listeners from Andrew.
Sorry, no. I'm sorry, no.
No, don't be that person. Don't get mad at the future. It's fine. It's fine. Kids
I'm not mad. It would just be nothing I would want to play, because I just want to find something new. I'm all about finding something new. I can go back to playing like Pokemon Yellow if I want to. I don't want to just do the
you don't go outside and find them, man. All right.
Jay, here's my last thing on this. We're kind of talking about the owners as this big edifice, right? And even though, like you guys pointed out, the NBA is its own company and these are franchises we're talking about here, I still feel like how to make sense of these Adam Silver comments is he's just being political. He must know Durant going to the Warriors is amazing for the league, but at the same time he's got to say it's not, because
that's what the owners
to placate the owners who lost, right? Like,
yeah,
the Warriors are loving it, of course. So there's one owner that's not mad at Joe Lacob, but there's these other owners that got pissed when it happened. I'm sure they're blowing him up, so he's got to say,
is there any owner other than the Warriors that's happy about that move? There can't be.
Well, no, but look at but how many teams courted him though and tried to make their own super teams? Like, quite a few. So
yeah,
if
the
they
Clippers
were mad,
went
they'd be
after
hypocritical.
him. Yeah.
So all these teams pursued him, so they all thought, it was a good idea to sign him. But anyway, that's all I think, is it's like, I mean, the NFL is the same way, right? Like, we were talking about how the Crafts and Jerry Jones are battling all the time, and
all of the North American leagues are like that.
Yeah, because these guys are, they're billionaires who are at the head of their own industries. But
Just
then
get rid of the salary cap. Just get rid of the salary cap.
So anyway, I don't know. I'm ready for more free agency stuff, other teams, if you guys are.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, you could keep talking forever on that one. So, yeah, pretty much Adam Silver is, just being political. The NBA, they're not different teams. It's one big. I like that point. It's, one big company with a bunch of divisions. And unfortunately, you've got a bunch of entitled jerks that don't know what they're doing running most of those divisions. I said it, NBA, come at me. And if the NBA wants a bright future, if the NBA wants to overtake the NFL, it should do what's in the best interest of the NBA. And remember, the NBA should remind itself that it was built on Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, followed up by Michael Jordan. And it shot itself in the foot by having a lockout right after Michael Jordan retired. I think that's important to remember, because people bring that up. I think both the NBA and NHL hurt themselves in that they got into arguments, they got into strikes, lockouts, whatever you want to, whatever they were, labor disputes, in a time that they really shouldn't have. The NBA did it right after Michael Jordan retired in 1999, and the NHL did it right when their contract was in negotiation for ESPN. And so, the NBA, if they have to be careful, because they've got a star, they've got LeBron James, who is the next Michael Jordan. I really don't want to see them get into an argument fight right when they're on the precipice of being great over stupid arguments to really hurt themselves. Candidly, I could watch a LeBron James super team fight a Steph Curry super team for the next 5 NBA finals and be happy. Just put them in big markets.
Yeah,
All right.
you know the NBA is messed up when if they were introducing someone to their company and they say, "Well, hey, our flagship office is in San Antonio," they would be like, "What? Why don't?"
No, there wouldn't be a problem saying our flagship office is in San Antonio. The problem would be, they would go,
Like a normal business would have like relocated that San Antonio office to New York, where they could get more.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the better way to say it would be our best run branch, as you're putting it, is in San Antonio. And you go, okay, what's their budget? How much responsibility have you given this owner? And they go, well, we've given them 5% of, we've given them responsibility for 5% of the company, and we've given them a meager budget. And then you look at the Knicks, right? And you go, well, what about this team in New York? And you go, oh, they're our worst division. You go, well, how much are they responsible? You go, 25% of the company, and we give them a $200 million budget every year. It's like, yep.
That's literally true, Dre. I mean, the way the salary cap is structured, right? Like, it's funny.
Well, I'm just saying the Knicks are in the best market. I mean, if I were the NBA, we talk relegation. I think my alternative, if I'm Adam Silver, is instead of relegation, because, they're all stadiums. These players all travel 41 days of the year, 41 games at minimum, right? I think my solution I'd go, your performance, let's leave the draft lottery alone. Let them have that freaking stupid myth. At the end of every season, I look at the markets in terms of, kind of what we did in that article you were talking, Andrew, with Devin and Arturo, that is basically, how much flexible income is in that state, how many different sports leagues, all that stuff. Essentially, New York and Los Angeles are the two biggest markets.
Emory Sports Analysis. I dropped a link in one comment. I mean, on one post one time, and it was Emory University. They had a great thing about the best fans, and they had all these different factors and how they calculated who was the best NBA fans and who were the best NFL fans. It was interesting too. So go ahead.
Right. Email me that at the end, because I'm not going to look through all the comment sections. But yeah, I definitely want to include that in the show notes again for anybody that missed that, myself included, Andrew. But I was just going to say, end of the year, I go, you know what, Warriors, you did amazing this last season. You're in LA now. Or I basically say you're allowed to choose where you are, and it has, but then limit them too, right? Like San Antonio, I say you are allowed to choose a market you're in this next season, but it has to be a big market, right? I don't let them go back to San Antonio. I go, LA, Chicago, New York. Where do you want to go?
This is for players.
This is for teams. At the end of the NBA season, after everything's done, I look at my best teams and I basically say, if you performed really well, you are put in a better market, and if you performed really badly,
I'm actually for that instead of player trading. I don't like player trading. I feel like I don't like the ethics of it. I feel like a team should get punished. If you sign a player to a bad contract, either you stick with that contract or you waive him. I don't think you should be able to just basically it's a cop out basically.
I think
I can trade this player for draft picks.
I mean the waiver wire makes a lot of sense, and what would be useful from a trade perspective. And it's funny, like we're talking stuff that's never going to be.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I signed Andrew Sutton. You just called yourself a mid-tier contract, $6 million a year for 4 years. And 2 years in, I decided it's not working. The way the waiver wire works is, and especially I forget the rule. The rule on the last CBA basically lets you recoup the cost, right? You were allowed to not take a salary cap hit. But I could waive if I waive you, if you willingly agree to sign with a team, not they pick you up off the waiver. If you and a team come to an agreement, then I could see either doing a trade-like scenario or a salary reduction scenario, right? So if I owe you $5 million a year and I waive you and you're put on the waiver wire and another team picks you up and agrees to pay you $4 million a year, then I'm only on the hook for $1 million a year. Or if that team says, hey, we'll pick up Andrew for $4 million a year and Andrew wants to play with us, so in exchange, we'll pick up his contract and send you a player. That's fine. I think the issue all of us kind of have is
contracts are funny because they have percentage of guaranteed money. So
yeah,
theoretically, you can, if you waive me at the right time, you're not on the hook for any money.
Yeah, and I mean that would be fine. I guess all I'm saying is I think all of our sketchy perspective is there would be something very weird if I got hired. I always use Google as an example just because I both work there and it's always put as the pinnacle of where you want to work in tech. If I got hired by Google and 2 years into my contract, they said, we're trading you. You have to go to Indiana and work for a startup company that sucks. Now, no worries, you're going to get paid the same. And I go, I don't. And actually, it's funny to your point because you said it's percentage based, right? So if they go, you're going to get paid the same, and I go, I don't give a damn that I'm going to get paid the same. I'm in.
I want to stay here.
I don't want to leave. So we've always had something really. It's really sketchy in the NBA to say.
Well,
you enter the league.
Well, we're in soccer and in overseas basketball. Overseas basketball, they get paid per week. So it's like a contract every week. So you could be playing 1 week and then not playing another week. And they also, if you want to say if you're playing for Barcelona but Real wants you, they can buy out your contract and then sign you to a new contract, which I would propose. I think that would be cool too, just to see how teams would value certain prospects or mid-level players. That would be interesting.
Of course, as this entire conversation came about from a question from Brian, essentially we have owners that aren't really interested in capitalism or efficient markets. They're interested in getting their way, and they will bully the commissioner into doing that. So we're never really going to see that. All right, so that's a nice long tangent to start the show, Brian. Free agency. I think we did discuss Kevin Durant and also getting Zaza and David West. The only real issue I would have with Zaza and David West, and it's basically the Paul Pierce issue, the Ray Allen issue. These are good players, but they're old. And it's going to be interesting to see if they hang around for another season. If they play even close to their performance last season, this offseason was just a freaking coup for the Warriors, especially since they got rid of Mo Buckets.
Yeah, those guys. Go ahead, Andrew.
And if the Warriors knew all it took was $14 million to re-sign Azili, they should have did that. I don't know what the deal was. Was there some type of conflict between the players or something? That's the stuff we don't know. Like, did he feel some type of way? We don't really know.
What Are you talking about the Mavericks or?
Well, so after they signed Durant, they were basically totally capped out. So they would have had to move like Klay Thompson's salary, or Livingston wouldn't have even been enough, I think, for the $8 million a year. They
didn't have bird rights. They didn't have bird rights on him.
I don't think so. No, he was
not on Durant. He wasn't traded. Yeah.
I mean on Azili. I'm asking you about Azili because even I thought.
Oh, you're talking about the Gilbert Arenas rule, right?
Well, but no. Even if you have bird rights on Azili, he has a cap hold, and they need to have at least a certain amount. So I mean, I understand them losing. I completely understand losing Azili. I actually made this point too because someone was saying, "Man, the Warriors really gutted themselves to get Durant. And are they going to do okay?" And I said, if in this offseason someone came up to you and said the Warriors are offering what Brandon Rush and Mo Spates and Festus Azili
and you get Durant.
And who else? If they I forget. If the 4 or 5 players the Warriors lost, if they had gone up to the Thunder and said, "We will trade you these 5 players for Durant," if any of us saw that trade rumor, we'd say Oklahoma City says F off.
I have some pocket change, but I'm trading this pocket change for $100 bill. You'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Pachulia and David West are a little bit older and could start getting bad, but they just need them to be average players when they're paying them that little. I mean, most teams have below average players that are paid a lot, so that's all they need really. My big concern is they still don't have a single rim protector on the roster.
I was gonna say they don't have a big,
because Pachulia is a really big guy and he rebounds well, but he just doesn't block shots. Draymond Green, he's okay for a guy that's 6'6", but he's not like Bogut or Azili. And David West, again, he's like a 6'8" guy. So yeah, I mean, there's let me show these Larry Sanders tweets that were coming up. I don't know if you guys saw these. Larry Sanders is coming back, apparently one of the best shot blockers of the last few years before he retired.
Because he was
if he goes to the
Warriors,
I was gonna say, and we don't know how he's gonna mesh. Where he's volatile. He's
chemistry.
No,
I mean not chemistry, but I'm just saying we don't know what we're gonna get out of it. It's been 2 years.
No, he could not be in playing shape at all. Who knows?
I'm with Dre on. I don't care about crazy because Dennis Rodman. Hey, he was crazy. So it doesn't really matter. That stuff doesn't matter. But it's been 2 years. So what are we gonna get out of him? We don't know.
They just need someone like him,
he
though.
never topped 2,000 minutes either. I mean, in
Yeah.
2013, he showed flashes of brilliance.
And isn't he like 27, 28?
He's 26.
26? Okay, so he's right around peak.
Now, for what it's worth, given his age and the fact that they can't spend any money on him, right? If he comes to the Warriors, it's for a minimum deal.
Yep.
Okay, that's a good deal.
I have no complaints with that. Like Ray Allen, I'm not excited about. Same exact argument. He hasn't played in 2 years. He was old. You know, he was fine his last couple of seasons. He was average, and you know he did definitely help the Spurs win a title. But I'm not excited about if Kobe Bryant comes back next season or Shaq's a better example. If Shaq tries to come back next season, I'm not like you were great once. I go no. Larry Sanders is the perfect type of contract I would love to see this team pick up because it's the type of risk I like. You know,
yeah.
One of the contracts we bashed and should bash was DeMar DeRozan, and a similar one we were talking this pre-show is Alan Crabb, the Trailblazers. They were our boys. What happened? What happened this offseason?
Yeah, we don't like the Myers Leonard deal.
I think 3-and-D guys are all the rage right now. So teams are overpaying for something that's essentially a two-tool baseball player.
Interesting.
That's a good way to put it.
It's overvalued. You don't know how good of a defender he is. You can't. There's kind of sparse numbers on how good of a defender he is, and he's not really that great of a 3-point shooter. So why did you give him $72 million?
I mean, basically, what's always interesting to me, and I think we both said this, Andrew, but I've just been stealing from you lately, is if a player is not above average by the end of their rookie contract, I don't want to sign them to a long deal ever.
I agree.
There are so few cases where I could ever think of that. I mean, the only possibility,
and I might squeeze it out on that qualifying offer. I might, but I wouldn't do it.
No, I'd give them the QO. Like, I mean, David Lee and Paul Millsap both ran into this where they didn't want to re-sign with their teams, but everybody knew that they were going to get matched, and they weren't going to sign the offer because they knew if they signed it, they'd get matched and they'd be forced to go back. So both, let's see, who was Paul Millsap? Was that Utah?
Yeah, Utah.
Paul Millsap in Utah and David Lee in New York. They both got re-signed for like $8 million for the QO for 1 year. Now, obviously, they don't count because they were both star players according to our numbers. But I just this weird notion of
$8 million for a slightly below swingman though. I don't like
for
that.
1 year maybe if I don't think I can get anything else. But even notice even then we're kind of like shrugging, going, I don't know. And so if we're saying I don't know to that, what was Alan Crabb's? Brian, do you have the details?
So guys, I have Alan Crabb's contract up on screen here. It is 4 years for $74.8 million, and that's an average of 18.7 a year up until 2019-2020 when he's going to be 27 years old. So my question to you guys is, how many crying Jordans do you give the Trailblazers?
You and your crying Jordans. This is all
contract?
you, Andrew. I'm out of crying Jordans.
Yeah, he kind of threw. I was watching in the chat, and I was confused by the crying Jordan thing. But this is bad, so I'll give him 4.
You'll give him the full 4.
4 out of 4. Yeah, this is bad.
All right, sorry, you're actually going to get me to jump in. Two to three, Brian.
What's the cap percentage, cap hold percentage? Because I think that's what people should look at more than the actual contract.
It's 94. It's about 94. It's between 94 and I think 110 if you look at the full term is what they're expecting. So if it's 18 mil a year, it's like 18 divided by 94 up to maybe 18 divided by 105 and then average. So
I'll actually agree with 3 because I think he's a better player than DeRozan.
Has he ever been above average?
Oh, maybe not. But okay, so
he's been just close to average. And if this is what we always argue.
That.
If you argue that he's
that's a big opportunity cost there.
If you argue that his defense is really good, then maybe you say he's a little above average. But that's what is key is I think anytime I show you a player that's below average in wins produced.
The thing is they're gonna overpay for McCollum. Watch, they're gonna overpay for McCollum too. So you're gonna have Damian Lillard, who's overpaid, Alan Crabb, who's overpaid, Myers Leonard, who's overpaid, and you're gonna have C.J. McCollum, who's eventually gonna be overpaid because he can score 20 points a game. I think they were on track, but now they're starting to veer off of track.
It's a lot like the Raptors, where they did. I guess the best name for this would be like Dumars syndrome, where a team without options makes a bunch of really smart moves, and these moves are out of necessity. And then because they get success, then they get flexibility. And as soon as they get flexibility, they do it.
I think their GM is an average GM because I think an average GM has those mood swings like that those up and downs. They have those up and downs.
And to answer your question, guys, sorry to jump in, but Alan Crabb has been negative 0.2 points over par per season last 2 seasons, so he's pretty much an average player.
Now to be fair, he's young, and so you might expect a jump. But anytime, like, here's the problem.
What year did he? How old was he when he came into the league? That's one of those things because he's more closer to that peak than a player like who would come into the league at 19 and who would expect to be bad for longer, but their peak is gonna.
He came in at 21. I think. How long did he go to school for?
He stayed for the full 4 years, and why wouldn't you at a great institution like that, guys? Come on, go Bears!
You gotta look at that ROI, and the ROI. I don't think they didn't come out too good on that contract on his rookie deal. And then
he only went to school for 3 years, Brian. California, or did he only play for 3?
You could be right.
So he's like 21.
He's 21 when he came into the league.
Yeah, I don't like that deal. I'm sorry, I don't like it.
No, I mean, I think whenever
critical, but I don't like that deal.
Well, no, anytime I have to look at a deal and I have to say, it's the same problem. We might talk Noah and Rose in a bit here. Anytime I have to be insanely optimistic about a deal to justify it, I've done something wrong. So to your point, right, we're saying you signed Alan Crabb to 4 years for roughly, I did a brief like back of the napkin calculation, about 17 to 18% of your cap space.
I don't like that.
No, you shouldn't. I 100% agree. And to basically point that out, right, even if I let you go up to the luxury, about 113 to 120 mil over the next couple of seasons, yeah, that's still expecting, 8 to 10 wins out of him to even be scraping the barrel for us, right? For that much money, we'd really want 10 wins kind of guaranteed. So from our perspective to say, well, maybe he'll jump in production and be twice as good, and maybe his defense is amazing, and maybe
did they re-sign Harkless? Because I think that would I would have I don't think I would have paid him $72 million, but I would have 40 to 55.
I think he's still a free agent. I think Harkless is still out there.
Wow.
So he's going to probably get
they have an $8.3 million cap hold on him, but because they signed these people, I don't know if they've released it, because that's what tends to happen is who was renouncing the rights to Festes and then a few other players, you renounce their rights to sign someone else because otherwise their cap hold keeps you from signing them.
Yeah, this is a website called Spotrac.com. Their cap analysis and all of their numbers is like top notch. That's where I go for cap news and for all of the numbers, the money numbers. I go there, and their stuff is pretty good. I just want to know how much. Is it
just SPOTRAK or
SPOTRAC.com?
Correct. Yeah, we have Alan Crabb's screen up here right now.
How much guaranteed is he get? How much guaranteed? Because I think they show that much. They show a lot of information.
Let's see. They got average salary, cap hit, and dead cap. Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out later. But okay. Here we go. Yeah, it's almost $75 million guaranteed.
Wow.
74.8 guaranteed.
So that's a full guarantee.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. It's not like the Rondo deal is going to be the best contract in the NBA next season. I'm excited.
So are we ready to talk about another deal that we actually like? Do you want to talk Jordan Hill now? Because I was kind of surprised to see that today.
Jordan Hill has kind of disappointed me in that he looked really great early in his career and has kind of had some ups and downs. He was only an average player, but for that that's the thing. If you factor in the amount, that's more than fine. Although
I think he has some injury issues.
He's getting older. He's getting up there now.
Yeah, he's getting older, and I think he has some injury issues.
He's still under 30 though, isn't he? Maybe.
Yeah, he'll be 29 next season.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's right around. Yeah, so he's past his prime. So he's slowly declining.
But no,
as soon as he hits 30, then that's when it speeds up.
To your point though, Brian, if you're going to sign a player for upside, like that's what the freaking Blazers are thinking with Alan Crabb and maybe McCollum, is these players might get better, and it costs you $20 million a season to do it. Well, if you're going to invest $4 million a year is it just 2 years?
2 years, $8 million total, $4 million a year.
That's a fantastic deal because best
Yeah.
case scenario, you're right, and he reverts to 2013, 2014 numbers where he was close to star level in limited minutes. If you get a player at star level for 1,500 minutes off the bench, you're doing great. If it costs you less than the mid-level exception. So
I say if you get an above average player, you don't have to get a star player or for a bench player. Even if you get an above average player, that's good, especially for $4 million.
Oh, absolutely. So I love this contract because best case scenario, they're right. They get 2 years of a productive player for nothing. Worst case scenario, they're wrong, and they spent, let's put this in perspective. They spent less than half of 1 year of an Allen Crabbe.
That team still has problems though, especially the Wiggins thing. I will be looking to trade him.
Wiggins
but now they're looking to trade Rubio, which would set them back if they did that. I think they got the wrong guy who they want to trade.
Well, they picked up Cole. Like, what's interesting about them this offseason is so far I've been impressed, but the rule seems to be with almost any NBA team this offseason, I kind of watch them. And like the Bulls are an example where I'm like, interesting. I like what you're doing. And then they fall apart. The Warriors are like the only team this season, maybe the Spurs as well, with Gasol. They're like two teams this season that haven't really just, eventually gone off the deep end for me.
But Jordan Hill is their fifth center, by the way, so they have a little bit of lineup balance problems.
Yeah, I was gonna say they kind of loaded it in the biggest position. I think they want to move Pekovic, but they can't because no one wants him. So
and he hasn't been his normal self the last couple of years. So yeah, maybe Jordan Hill, maybe that deal's not quite as good, but it's still solid.
No, it's a fantastic deal.
I think it's still 2 light years at least, maybe 3. Dre, what do you guys think?
No, and I just looked at Pekovic. Geez, and I was going to say, like, to the point is the real question. Any franchise, you ask them a few questions. Like the Raptors, our question was, what are they going to do with DeRozan? And they failed that test. I think Andrew's right. The real question is, what are the Wolves going to do between Rubio and Wiggins? Because it's so fascinating to me to see people, bash Rubio and say, Rubio can't be, the guy on your team. I'm going to go to the tools tab and look up Ricky Rubio versus Andrew Wiggins. It's so bizarre to me for people to point at Ricky Rubio and say, he's not what you need because he's got these deficiencies, right? I think his shooting is bad.
Because he can't create a shot. Oh my God, he sucks.
But you look at, the funny thing is, Andrew Wiggins is only 1.3% better true shooting, which only puts him at slightly above average.
And we've seen significant amount of him now. I think we're at a point to where we could probably get rid of him. We've seen significant amount of him. I don't care too much about him being so young, but we've seen a lot of him.
Well, and the better point is when you have a player and they have trade value, you really need to capitalize on that because Andrew Wiggins, I think right now has trade
value.
There are teams right now. He's off the market good. Thank goodness the Bulls weren't stupid enough to even leave him on the market. But, allegedly Jimmy Butler's off the market. But there are teams that have like Jimmy Butler, maybe Westbrook's available. If you've got these teams that possibly have dangling stars, holy crap, go at him. Go at him with Wiggins because he still has that value. And if Wiggins gets signed to the second Wiggins signs a long-term contract extension, which rest assured, if he's on the Wolves in 2 years, he will, or 1 year, right? He will. What team is going to want to trade you a star for Wiggins, whereas a team right now might trade you an underrated star? There are lots of teams I could see you attacking Wiggins with and coming away with a ton.
And that point you made about the focus groups and the question that you should ask. I think if you're a fan of a franchise or a team or whatever, I think you should ask those questions. And if they aren't what you want them to be, you should probably find a new team because I don't think Minnesota. I think people are optimistic because of Towns, but I think they're gonna probably get dragged down because of Wiggins because they love Wiggins. That franchise, the organization loves Wiggins.
It's KG2 with Latrell Sprewell and Marbury, yeah.
And let's not forget about Levine either. He's a guy that won the slam dunk contest and has some hype, but he's not a very good player yet.
It's in that package for Butler.
Yeah.
Package deal, which would have been a steal.
Yep.
And but to your point about what you were saying earlier, just a draft pick is worth more than a draft pick used. It's like a gift card, basically. You don't want the gift card. It's basically a gift card versus money. You rather have the money because of the utility function that money brings versus, oh, well, this gift card can only be used at Target.
Well, it's also what makes it worse is it's essentially a gift card. It's a randomized gift card, and I go, this could be $100 to,
a store you love.
It could be $100 to Amazon, or it could be $20 to, Taco. Well, I'd still use
Home Depot. Home Depot.
I like Home Depot. Is that? Oh, are you an apartment owner? Because I was going to say Home Depot. If you like house, that's your best friend. I was just going to say, yeah, it's a randomized gift card, and you can't guarantee it. I mean, one of my favorite drafts is the one with Kenyon Martin, which is just so ugly. The 2003 draft with Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Like you could throw a dart at the wall and would win in that draft. And then there are drafts where you could have the savviest analytics squad, and it's like, congratulations, you got nothing.
Yeah, because in the draft with Wiggins, I remember Arturo wasn't really high on Aaron Gordon, but it looks like Aaron Gordon probably should have been the #1 pick that year.
Yeah. And it also looks like he's going back to small forward this year.
And that would be a great trade for a Wiggins. That would be a great Wiggins trade if they traded Wiggins for Aaron Gordon.
Brutal.
The winner of that trade was Jokic, man. Or Jokic, however you say it. Oh, my God, he's the best.
Yeah.
All right, we're close to about an hour, and I know we wasted a lot of the show, so I definitely want to shout out some of the columns that we didn't really discuss. I discussed if the Knicks could make the playoffs. My basic takeaway was that I'm not impressed with the Knicks offseason moves. That there's possibility for optimism if Rose comes back, if Noah comes back, if Melo stays healthy. Too many ifs. Like. That I think is a rule. We basically, as you've noticed us discussing free agency, it's important to go. The more ifs you have to add to an expensive deal, the worse the deal is. Especially if the upside is limited, and as soon as you start getting into older injured players, the upside is limited. We may talk next week about the Bulls, because the Bulls are an interesting case. If you didn't read it, I've got to shout out the Allen Houston case study. This was amazing data presented to me by Art Rondeau with his time with Allen Houston. And what's just fascinating about this to me is you couldn't cherry pick this type of data, is what I want to stress. If I go through a player's 10-year NBA career and I'm allowed to cherry pick 30 games, I can make them look good. This was in one season in 30 games, and I was astounded at the disparity, because most players, I couldn't do that. I couldn't go to 30 games of LeBron James's career in one season and just have a much better LeBron James in the rest of his career.
Yeah, that piece was interesting. That was a good piece. That was a very interesting piece.
It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. And my favorite part, unfortunately, about that piece is a metric I came up with. I'm curious on your thoughts, Andrew. I'll go a little long for this, just because I like getting hype and praise on my own stuff, was the game changer stat. I came up with this with Art because he pointed out that one of the importances of his helping Allen Houston was that the Knicks made the All-Star. The Knicks were the best team at the time of selection of the All-Star game coach. And as a result, Jeff Van Gundy was selected to start the All-Star game for the Eastern Conference. And that was important for Jeff Van Gundy's career. And essentially, could I quantify that Allen Houston was, I want to say, kind of directly responsible? And the issue, right, is even if I tell you their points over par, if you plan a really good team, I can't guarantee it. But I basically, what you can do is I take a player's performance in a game, I replace it with an average player, and I say, would the outcome of the game have changed with just that simple move? And this was fascinating because today I compared Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant, and the most amazing stat out of that was in 2003, there were 20 games for the Spurs that won 60 games, that if you had replaced Tim Duncan with an average player, they would have been expected to lose those games.
Dre, I love this stat, but here's my suggestion to take it to the next level. It needs to be per salary, right? That would be an even more interesting way to do it.
Why so?
Just because if, they're paying a big chunk of their cap for Tim Duncan, then yeah, he better change games from win to loss, right? They're expecting him to. Now, I understand since the market's so inefficient that maybe that's not really pertinent for what you're looking at here, but I think it'd be a little more interesting.
You guys are never, I say this to Boxscore Geeks fans, you guys are never satisfied. Anyway,
I love this stat, personally.
The thing I find interesting about the game changers metric is that it would probably be, it probably will do wonders in for fantasy, daily fantasy. be good. It would be good for that kind of stuff.
I mean, it depends.
Even though I just like read a New York Times piece about how like new members of daily fantasy sites are getting like killed by
don't trust
pros.
the New York Times is so freaking stupid when it comes to
it
daily
doesn't
fantasy.
take a rocket scientist to realize that the top guys put in so many entries, but that's just how it is. That's not
I don't
really.
want to take this show super long, but all I'll say is the simple argument I've heard about any article you read on daily fantasy in this stigmatizing light, which New York Times does, is all of the same issues apply to Candy Crush, and no one has a problem there. Candy Crush, you pay money to play
or
levels.
or any like video game. The top
Yeah.
players, they put in so many hours, they find ways to exploit the mechanics of the game. But that's just how it is. You
But I
can't
guess
get mad at-
my bigger point is you can't get mad at something that people spend money for, and you go that they're losing their money, and you go if you view it as entertainment, which is how like Adam Silver has portrayed it. Well, if it's not okay for someone to spend money on something they view as entertainment without getting a return, then anything, a video game included, is by definition exploitive. So I hate the New York Times has had so many pieces that are just kind of hit pieces, and they're not well researched, and it's painful to watch. But I'll leave it at that.
Clickbait.
Yep.
Do you guys want to talk one more free agent before we
All right,
conclude?
fine. We'll give you one more before we close shop.
We've got to go Boban here. I mean, come on. This is an interesting one to me because 3 or $7 million, you say, wow, he was amazing per minute, but such a small number of minutes. But that being said, so it's very small sample size, right? Who knows? But $7 million is, a pretty cheap contract. So
Yeah.
Is this a good enough deal to say Boban maybe is going to be that good if he plays more minutes?
I think it's great value considering that it might be drumming insurance. Like we don't know, you never know. A big man can go down, so I think it's great insurance. That's my way of looking at it because I don't think Stan Van is going to play them together, which I think he should.
Twin Towers, make it happen, Van Gundy.
I think he should experiment with it because Drummond is kind of mobile. He's very mobile for his size, and you can play him at the 4 and then play Boban at the 5.
Interesting. I mean, basically, our general thing is if a player has a lot of upside and is cheap, we're generally a fan of the move.
And Boban can stretch. He can shoot outside.
Oh, really?
Boom.
I haven't watched him enough to know that. I was going to say the other interesting aspect to me about this for the Spurs, though, is so they let Boban walk, which, is what it is.
Duncan retired.
Duncan retires. Then the other thing, though, is they targeted Dwight Powell on the Mavericks, but the Mavericks matched. So this is kind of interesting to me in that they kind of let a cheap backup big go.
Or potential starting big.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, we know for a fact they're they got Pau Gasol, right? So they've essentially replaced Tim Duncan with Pau Gasol, and hopefully this was so painful to me. When I looked at Tim Duncan's playoff numbers, and this is a guy that just his playoff numbers his entire career were freaking ridiculous, and to watch the last season of his career, and
he was
on just
hurt.
such a depressing note, it was just kind of sad to me.
That's probably why they lost to OKC because he was hurt, or was it Golden State? It's been so. It feels like the playoffs have been so far with this free agency stuff. It feels like the playoffs have been so far away.
Yeah, I mean, it was to OKC. I mean, it's rough to say why they lost, so to speak, right? Because Oklahoma City was just a really good team.
And I think they kind of lucked into the big bully ball with Cantor and Adams. I think they kind of lucked into that. I think they were just. Some people say that the coach for OKC he tinkered around with it a little during the regular season, but now he's like, he find the secret to success, and now he's an amazing coach. I don't agree with that, but it's been put out there. I think Haralabob Vargas, I think he put that out there that he didn't think that he was a great coach, but now he seems like he's made some adjustments, and now he seems like he's an adequate coach now. But I don't believe that.
I do think that playing Duncan instead of playing Boban was an interesting maneuver. And I can understand why. And it's kind of funny because we talk sports a lot and kind of this weird culture about, how teams, how you're expected to be loyal, you're expected to be whatever. And I think that was a problem. I think, can't if that team was being honest with themselves, they would have said, Tim Duncan's just not up to snuff right now, guys. We got to pull him. But then it's, likely his last NBA season.
But for
He's
whatever reason, players like to try to play through injuries, which I think is detrimental to the team. You shouldn't want to. It's like when people try to come to work sick. Do not come to work sick, people. I'm sorry. I don't care if you have no. We don't care if it's just a small cough. Don't. I mean, you could infect others, and then more people, and then it lowers the production of the whole thing. I don't agree with people coming to work sick.
Well, I mean, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm cutting us off, people. This is amazing. Okay. This is awesome stuff. As we can see, this is the good news, everybody. We do a weekly show. Andrew, as you said, you're our off-season acquisition. So guess what? Guaranteed, as this off-season goes on, we will need topics to discuss. So if we're going long on these earlier shows when the off-season is full of news, just know that it means we'll have stuff to discuss when the off-season gets lean, and rest assured it's going to get lean real quick here if history follows what it's done before. So anyway, that has been the Boxscore Geeks show. Do we have any shout-outs? Brian, you got a couple, and one of them, you're kind of stealing mine, but I was shouting myself out, so that's fair. So I'll let Andrew go first, then Brian, and then I'll close this out.
Just want to give 2 quick shout outs to Spotrac, that website I brought up, and Real GM. I stay on Real GM. I stay on Real GM. So those are my 2.
Sound like amazing. Yeah, you and me, it sounds like the only rotation, and you're kind of selling me. I like Spotrac's site, so I may do Spotrac instead of Basketball Insiders. But Basketball Insiders and Real GM are my 2. So
they're both really good.
Yep. All right, Brian, you got a couple.
Yeah, so I've got a re-shout out from last week. It was Summer Games Done Quick 2016. Had just gotten started, and it went all last week, and it concluded. They raised a total of $1.2 million for Doctors Without Borders, so good job on them. A lot of great speedrunning was done, and Doctors Without Borders is a great organization. I had a shout out to you for putting Super Mario Maker content here on Channel Nerd Numbers on Twitch. And I will be following that along in the future. So I'd actually changed the name of the broadcast today because it was Super Mario Maker. So yeah, that was awesome.
It's weird. I have a tool called the Elgato Capture HD, which is a pretty fantastic tool that streamlines a lot of this. So yeah, I've a friend of mine's made some fun levels in Super Mario Maker. If you don't know what this is, you're a fan of the Super Mario Brothers franchise. There's a game that lets you make your own levels, and then other people can play them. So I'm going to throw this challenge out to the listener. We'll include a link in it. I have the world record on a friend of mine. His name is Mitch. He's made a couple levels. This is his easiest level. His hard level I still haven't beaten. But his easiest level is called So Close. I have the world record. If you can get the world record on it and, either include a note in chat to me on twitch.tv or, put a comment in the comment section at Boxscore Geeks or, tweet at me at Nerd Numbers. I'll give you a shout out on the show if you beat my world record because I can already see ways to improve what I did there. And then there's some other levels done by Mitch. If you beat any of those, you'll get ultimate praise from me. So yeah, if you're a fan of more than just basketball and want to see me play video games, I'm definitely going to be using my new toy to do some streaming on twitch.tv. This was a lot of fun. I was really excited to get it set up this week, and I'm excited to be a world record holder at one level of Super Mario Maker.
Congratulations, Dre. My last shout out is that EVO 2016 starts tomorrow, and on the subject of gaming, this is by far the best competitive gaming event that happens every year. It's so exciting. It's so hyped. The Sunday finals for Street Fighter V are going to be in the Mandalay Bay Event Center. It's going to be on ESPN2. So, yeah, this to me is the one thing that anyone should watch if they want to try getting into esports. It's a pretty exciting event. So
awesome. And we've got a link to that we'll include. So anyway, that's been our show. This is the Boxscore Geeks show. If you found us not through our site, you can find us on boxscoregeeks.com. Our show is also on iTunes and Stitcher, the Boxscore Geeks show. Subscribe, upvote, helps us out. I've been your host, Dre, a.k.a. Nerd Numbers. With us, as always, Andrew Sutton and Brian Foster, a.k.a. Boxscore Brian. We go live every week, usually Tuesday or Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/Nerd Numbers. If you missed the live show, you can catch the recaps on YouTube, channel Nerd Numbers. We hope you enjoyed the off-season, and we will see you next week.